Today is about a political memoir and a work of fiction. Welcome to the channel's book club. My name is Olakunle Kasumo. Some political memoirs can be described as controversial and deservedly so, considering the emotional reactions they generate. Here are a few popular ones. Don't Ever Tell by Kathy O'Bain. Shortly after publication, the writer was sued after 5 of her 8 siblings claimed she had been unfair to her family. Speaking for Myself, the autobiography by Cherry Blair, published in May 2008 and roundly criticized in the press. The book contained unbridled criticisms of the then Prime Minister, Gordon Brown. The author was also heavily criticized by the family of David Kelly, the government expert at the center of the Iraq War controversies. My Son Marshall, My Son Eminem by Debbie Nelson. In her memoir, Nelson took the opportunity to undermine her son, Eminem, the rap artist. She claimed he had an imaginary friend named Casper, that he was heavily bullied by classmates, and that he used to charge friends in his neighborhood. A Million Little Pieces by James Frey. This book sold over 3.5 million copies and sat on top of the New York Times non-fiction paperback bestseller list for 15 weeks. But in January 2006, large sections of the book were exposed as fake. The Third Man, Life at the Heart of New Labour by Peter Mendelsohn. The book contains a mixture of autobiography, personal reflection, and political history. It draws heavily on the detailed diary notes that Peter took during the events, discussions, and meetings that shaped the government and the Labour Party over 25 years. In Nigeria, 2 books can arguably be ranked as the most controversial political memoirs in the last 30 years. They are Chinua Achebe's last book, There Was a Country, which we reviewed here on this show 2 episodes ago. Since it was released, it has generated debates and heated reactions, mostly along ethnic lines, regarding the personalities and events of the Biafra War. The other book, which we are reviewing today, is The Accidental Public Servant by Nasir El-Rufai, a former minister of the Federal Capital Territory. The book attempts to narrate El-Rufai's experiences as a minister and has earned him perhaps more critics than fans. So, after this break, it's going to be The Accidental Public Servant with El-Rufai. Please don't go away. Why did you choose to write your book in such a revealing way?
I really felt strongly that governance in Nigeria has become a sort of conspiracy of silence, in which people go into government, go through experiences, both good and bad, both youthful and useless, and come out and keep quiet because they want to be invited back again. I have no desire to be invited back again, so I felt I was in a position to be very frank about my own experiences and my own opinions of events as well as people and processes. So that's what I did. It was a very difficult decision to take, but I felt that the country needed to have some insider glimpse into how we run our affairs and what we can do to improve it. In addition, I also wanted young people to understand that we are all human. Even though many would consider us to be successes while we are in government, a few of us that served under Obasanjo, we were human. We had foibles, we had weaknesses like everyone else, and there is nothing stopping any one of them to be as good or even better. And I hope that that goal has been achieved.
Were you ever interested in running for the office of the president? Are you interested in running for the office of the president? This is another issue some critics have raised, because in the book you expressed that you were never interested, and they say you were. What actually happened?
You know, maybe because in the last few years we have depreciated the office of the president to a point that anybody thinks he can be president. But I think running for president is a very big deal. I think that many people do not appreciate the burden and the weight of the office of the president. They only see the convoys and the private jet and German medical care as presidency. Presidency is more than that. I have been privileged at a relatively young age to work with two presidents, General Abdulsalami Abubakar and President Obasanjo. And I know how difficult that job is. And I would not wish it on my enemy. Certainly, I would not wish it on me. If circumstances force you to do it, yeah, sure, you do it. But it's not something that anyone would want to go out of his way to look for or spend money for if you really want to do the job. Because the post-Jonathanian Nigeria will be a very messy place. And whoever is going to inherit this grand mess is going to have to work 23 hours a day, 7 days a week, just to lift Nigeria out of the morass we have found ourselves in. So I honestly don't find the prospects of being president very attractive, unlike what most people think.
Some reviewers and critics have wondered why you have quoted very long dialogues verbatim in your book. They doubt the credibility of the book because of that. So how do you respond to that?
I recorded when this was happening. I keep detailed notebooks. By the time I finished my 4 years as minister, I had 47 notebooks in which I recorded events and conversations verbatim as they were happening or immediately after they happened. It's not that I remembered everything, but I went through my notes and extracted what I felt was relevant. It's my recollection. You can disagree with it. Write your own recollection. Let Nigerians judge the two and place weight to both our recollections and decide which to believe. I cannot write a book that everyone is happy with or pleased with, particularly people that do not come out smelling like roses in the book. That is understandable, but I was conscious of the likelihood that I would write such a book, and I kept detailed notes. Anyone that worked with me knew that I never went anywhere without my small notebooks, and I kept detailed notes, and I still have them. In fact, my publisher wants us to publish the notes as ministerial diaries, just verbatim recording of what I took in cabinet meetings, in meetings with investors and public servants. I kept detailed notes. I was very meticulous in keeping those notes because that's how I was trained. I'm a quantity surveyor by training, and quantity surveying training teaches you to take notes when you meet with clients, with contractors, with other consultants, because we move around a lot. You can start a project and before you finish it, you move on to another. You have to leave behind detailed notes for whoever inherits the project to be able to catch up. So it was something that I had learned to do even as a private practitioner, and I maintained it throughout my years in government. I didn't rely on my memory. My memory is not a good, it's not a very good one, but I kept detailed notes.
Why did you choose to reveal very private conversations? That's another thing some of the critics of your book are saying. You revealed very personal, private conversations, and you put them in the book. Why do you do that?
There is no one-on-one conversation that I reproduced in the book that did not have to do with governing Nigeria. I never revealed any one-on-one conversation when it had to do with a person's girlfriend or any marital problems he's having, okay? Or if he was facing financial problems that were personal to him, right? Everything that I revealed that was one-to-one conversation had to do with governing Nigeria, so it's of public interest. You cannot sit and plan to do something bad against our country and you say it's private to you. Nobody should talk about it just because you don't want it revealed. That is not right. Anything that we do as public servants in the course of public service should be available for every Nigerian to know. What is the secret in governing a country? You took an oath of office to be fair, to be just to everyone, to do right. So why are you afraid if it comes out? I have no problem anyone, publishing any private conversation I've had with him that have to do with the governance of Nigeria. And that is my attitude. And I think I also wanted people to know that in the course of public service, you should be very mindful what you say or what you do, because it is the things we say and do that determine whether our country makes progress or not.
What was your experience like writing The Accidental Public Servant?
Yeah, well, I think the hardest part for me is writing, because I'm not trained to be a writer. I'm trained to be an applied mathematician. I'm a quantity surveyor. I'm more comfortable with numbers than words. So the way I made progress with that was to just record what I wanted to say in the book. If you read the book, you see that it's fairly conversational. It's not written with the literary style of a real author. I tried to be conversational, but that's because I recorded chapter by chapter what I wanted to say, and it was transcribed by a firm in the US into the written word, and then I edited that. So that helped somewhat. That was difficult, having to have a base material to start. Then the second thing was getting all the materials I needed. I have all my files. I have lots of documents, but they were in Nigeria at the time that I was in exile. So we had to arrange for them to be shipped gradually when people were coming to bring with some of my files that I needed to refer to and so on. That was hard, because researching a book like this, trying to get dates right and so on was quite difficult. And then going through the notebooks and picking what was important, because when you've been minister for 4 years and Director General of Privatization Agency for another 4 years, there is a lot of stuff that has happened, and you have to pick what is important. This book is not the whole story, but it's just a snapshot. So I had to pick and choose what was important. And in fact, at the end of the day, when I finished the manuscript and handed it over to my publisher, he took the decision that we must remove at least 5 chapters from the original manuscript, because it was too big. It was very big, and that was even before we put in the appendices and the footnotes and all that. So we removed 5 chapters from the original manuscript, which is now going to be the subject of a second book that I'm working on. But it was difficult. I mean, it took me the better part of 3 years to write this, and still there were still errors, some dates we got wrong. One of the dates was an editing error, because someone thought that the date I put there was wrong, so it was changed and all that. And I did not quite realize how much it takes to put together a book. I've learned for the first time what it is, and because of that I now respect authors even more than I used to. But it was also a very interesting, inspiring and stimulating experience, and with mixtures of sadness and joy at the same time, because sometimes when you have to relate events that were painful, you have to relive those events. But on the whole, I think it was a worthwhile effort. I would do it again and again.
I'm sure there's going to be a second edition to this book. What would you change when you're working on the second edition?
I'm not sure I'll change much. I'll correct some of the errors in dates. I would add a chapter on NITEL, the privatization of NITEL, because many people thought I just dodged the subject completely, but that's because it was one of the two of the 5 chapters removed from the book had to do with the privatization of NITEL, which I will go into some detail in the next book. But I would have answered some of the questions that were raised on NITEL. I would have added at least a chapter on the privatization of NITEL, and perhaps edited down some of the stuff we did on public service reforms and what we did in Abuja, because I noticed that people were not interested in that. People were more interested in the gossipy, human parts, where someone did something wrongly, or people are more interested in gossip than substance, and I found that a little shocking. So I would have combined some of the things we did, like Abuja public service reform and privatization, into fewer chapters, because nobody even referred to them in the commentary. And I thought that was interesting, because that's what I did. The rest of the stories about that time were collateral issues for me. What was substantive for me was we sold some government companies and they are doing well. We tried to fix Abuja. We tried to make Abuja an orderly city, and we did this and that. We took some really tough decisions, but nobody seemed to be interested in that, which is quite interesting, which says a lot about human nature.
Can you share with us the books and the authors that have influenced you the most?
Among Nigerian authors, I think Chinua Achebe is the one I have the greatest respect for. With Things Fall Apart, I've read, Arrow of God is my favorite, actually, not Things Fall Apart. Things Fall Apart was the first I read, and it was interesting. No Longer at Ease, A Man of the People. I mean, Chinua Achebe was great. May his soul rest in peace. I have also read some of Cyprian Ikwensi's works. So that's among Nigerian authors. Wole Soyinka I found difficult because he writes in to understand Wole Soyinka, you have to have a thesaurus or dictionary by your side. So I found that very difficult. But I enjoyed The Man Died, because it was it was a story that had to do with human rights, and and so I connected with The Man Died. I like The Interpreters. But my favorite Wole Soyinka book is Brother Jero, The Trials of Brother Jero. And this we read while in secondary school. But I would say, apart from the Holy Book of Islam, the Quran, which I read at a very young age, by the time I was 10, I had read the Quran cover to cover with English translation. The book that has influenced my thinking the most is a work of fiction written by an Russian immigrant to the US called Ayn Rand, The Fountainhead. It's the story of an architect who wanted to design buildings completely different from the way buildings were designed at the time, and of course the whole system ganged up against him, and he fought and prevailed in the end. That's the kind of heroic story that I liked, and in many ways it defined for me what I needed to do in my life. If you want to do things, if you want to change the way things are done, if you want to change the world, if you want to effect change so that there is progress, you must expect opposition. But you must also believe that one is a majority if you believe you are right. And that I read that book when I was 18, and it just changed the way I looked at the world. And Ayn Rand still remains one of my favorites.
Thank you very much for coming on the channel's book club.
Thank you, Kunle.
It opens with a gate of arts, moves into windows of creativity.
She finds the only English word she knows from somewhere hidden in the belly of a 4-foot 9-inch body, and instead of "I won't care," she greets us with "bye-bye."
Branches into rooms of color, and ends with a roof of imagination. Walk into Art House. The pieces all come together at 9:30 p.m. every Saturday. Art House, life is art.
I hope you've enjoyed yourself. Our book of the week is The Accidental Public Servant by Nasir El-Rufai. Please get yourself a copy, read it, and let's know what you think about it. What are you reading now?
All right. The book I'm reading now is The title is You Don't Need to Be. You Don't Need a title to be a leader. Written by Mark Sanborn, an American, and also the author of The Fred Factor.
Do you come here to read a lot?
Yeah, I come here to study mostly, yes. Regularly. I come here regularly.
What's reading like for you? Do you just read professional books, study for exams, or do you read outside of those?
No, I certainly read outside of those. Mostly, I tend to read books about politics, history, culture, mostly set in the older era. And yeah, I like to read financial books also.
Books on politics, sports, history, fiction, all sorts. But there are also books on medicine. With us today is a guest who has written 2 fascinating books that are medically related. Her name is Dr. Gbemisola Daramola. She's written a book titled Accidents and Emergencies, and another one titled The Pregnant Woman. 2 very important books. Welcome, Dr. Gbemi. So why did you choose to write on accidents and emergencies?
I had my internship at the University College Hospital, and while I was doing my rotations, went through the emergency unit a lot, and I observed that many victims of accidents were mismanaged by well-meaning good Samaritans that helped them at the site of accidents. You know, usually the process of transfer from the scene of the accident to the hospital, and some of those people ended up being quadriplegic. Also observed that the average Nigerian, well, knows very little about what to do in accident and emergency situations. And considering that we still do not have paramedics in Nigeria, we can't call 911, you know, where they tell you on the phone that do this, and in a few minutes they are there. People need to know what to do in such situations so we can reduce the number of people that die from road traffic accidents and other emergency situations.
How important, how critical are those first few minutes between the time when you want to rescue the victim and when you take the victim to a hospital?
Those first few minutes they are very crucial. Yeah, because it's what determines if this person will live or not. It's what determines the quality of life this person will have, even if this person lives. So those first few minutes are very important. Who gets there first, what the person does. You know, there are some people that should not be moved in a particular way because you suspect they have what we call the head or neck injury. And when you move them in that way, they end up with a spinal injury, you know. And also, if you've gone through the book, the cardiopulmonary resuscitation, if rather than stay with somebody who needs that and you are wailing and crying, if you could give CPR to a victim, then you could save that life.
Are subjects like this, accidents and emergencies, pregnancy, and so on, are they being taught in schools? How important is it to teach these things in our schools and workplaces even?
From my own observation, I wouldn't say they are taught in schools and offices, but very few schools, you know, like the eyebrow schools, well, that's because you need the owners of the school or the management of the school themselves to be enlightened to know that, okay, we can't teach our students this. There's something like this our students need to know, you know, before they teach the students. So if they are not, and from the little I've seen since I wrote this book, I've been to schools to try to introduce it to them, and you know, I've got varying responses. Some people are like, oh, these are not the kind of things our students should be reading now, but a few are like, oh, we need this, they should know this. So I wouldn't say it's something taught in schools and offices like that. Maybe, well, among the police or the Federal Road Safety, people who are expected to see accident victims and be called upon in such situations, maybe they may have trainings on these things, but I don't think it's something that is very you can find everywhere.
I'm going to ask you this personally: what's your reading habit like outside of medicine?
I read, first of all, newspapers. I enjoy following everything going on in politics. I read that a lot, you know. Then some other magazines, women magazines, Christian magazines.
Hi everyone, my name is WAJE and I'm here to encourage the kids and our viewers at home to read. It's seriously important because it exposes you, you know, it broadens your mind. There's so many things that you can do and conquer if you have the right knowledge, regardless of what it is. So please people, this is the Channels Book Club. I encourage you to read because it is that important. Thank you.
We'll be happy to have you on any of our social media platforms displayed on your screen. It will be great to get your comments and suggestions. Thank you for joining us today. And remember, one great book can change your life. Bye-bye.